Jake Martinez wiped the grease from his hands on an old red rag. The clock on his garage wall showed 9:30 in the evening. He had been working on Mrs. Peterson's old truck for 3 hours, but the engine still made that terrible knocking sound. Tomorrow, he would try again. The garage sat on the edge of Millfield, Montana, a small town where everyone knew everyone else. Jake had lived here his whole life. His father built this garage 30 years ago, and Jake took it over when the old man retired. People came from 3 counties over to get their cars fixed because Jake had a gift. He could hear what was wrong with an engine just by listening to it run. Jake turned off the lights and locked the garage door. The night air was cool and full of stars. He loved living out here where the sky was dark enough to see the Milky Way. City folks never got to see sights like this. As he walked toward his small house behind the garage, he heard a strange sound. It was like thunder, but different. Sound came from the woods that stretched for miles behind his property. Jake stopped and listened. The sound came again, followed by a bright flash of light between the trees. Lightning, he thought at first. But there were no clouds in the clear night sky. The flash came again, this time closer to the edge of the woods. Something crashed through the trees with a sound like breaking. Glass mixed with metal scraping against rock. Jake grabbed his flashlight from the porch and walked toward the woods. His boots crunched on the dry leaves as he made his way between the tall pine trees. The smell of something burning reached his nose. Not wood burning, but something else. Something that smelled like hot metal and ozone. After walking for 10 minutes, Jake saw a glow ahead through the trees. He pushed through a thick patch of bushes and found himself in a small clearing. What he saw there made him drop his flashlight. Craft sat in the middle of the clearing. It was not like any airplane or helicopter Jake had ever seen. The thing was about 20 feet long and shaped like a teardrop. Its surface looked like it was made of liquid silver that flowed and moved, even as Jake watched. Strange blue lights pulsed along its sides like a heartbeat. Jake picked up his flashlight with shaking hands. Part of the craft was cracked open, and more blue light spilled out from inside. Steam or smoke drifted up from the damaged section. As Jake got closer, he could see that the crack went deep into the craft. Whatever this thing was, it was badly hurt. A sound came from inside the craft. Not mechanical, but something alive. Jake heard it again, a low moan like someone in pain. He knew he should run back to his house and call the sheriff, but something about that sound made him move closer instead. Jake shined his light through the crack in the craft. Inside, he could see a space that was bigger than should have been possible. The walls glowed with soft light that seemed to come from the material itself. Strange symbols moved across surfaces like living text. And lying on what looked like a bed made of the same flowing metal was something that was definitely not human. The being was tall, maybe 7 feet if it stood up. Its skin was pale and seemed to glow with its own light. It had 4 arms, all longer and thinner than human arms. Its head was larger than a human head, with big eyes that were closed. When it breathed, Jake could see that its chest moved differently than a human chest would. The being opened its eyes. They were completely black, like looking into deep space. When it saw Jake, it tried to sit up, but fell back with another moan of pain. One of its forearms was bent at a wrong angle, clearly. Broken, Jake knew he should be afraid. Every movie he had ever seen told him to run away from the alien. But looking at this being, all he could see was someone who needed help. The same way he felt when he found injured animals in the woods. The alien reached toward a small device. On what looked like a control panel, the device began to glow, and suddenly, Jake could hear words in his head. Not words exactly, but meanings that his brain turned into words he could understand. "Please," the voice in his head said. "Do not be afraid. I mean no harm. My name is Veltar. I am hurt, and my ship is damaged. I need help." Jake almost dropped his flashlight again. The alien was talking to him, in his head. But somehow it did not feel scary. It felt more like the alien was very tired and very worried. "You really talking to me?" Jake said out loud. "Yes. My translator allows us to communicate. I am sorry to frighten you." I did not mean to crash on your world. My ship was damaged by your planet's magnetic field. I cannot repair it alone. Jake looked around the inside of the craft. He could see places where parts had broken or come loose. Wires that looked like they were made of light hung disconnected. A section of the wall had a hole burned through it. To most people, this would look like impossible alien technology. To Jake, it looked like something that was broken and needed to be fixed. What kind of ship is this? Jake asked. It is a long-range scout vessel for my people, the Zephyrians. I was carrying important information to the Galactic Council when my quantum drive failed. I've been drifting for days, trying to find a place to land safely. Jake did not understand half of what Veltar said, but he understood the important part. This was someone far from home with a broken ship. Jake had been fixing broken things his whole life. Let me take a look, Jake said. He climbed through the crack in the ship's hull. Inside, the ship was even more amazing. The walls curved in, ways that hurt to look at, like they folded back on themselves. The floor felt solid under his feet, but it seemed to glow with each step. Everything hummed with a low vibration that Jake could feel in his bones. Veltar watched as Jake examined the damaged systems. The human moved around the ship like he understood what he was seeing. He touched broken connections and nodded to himself. He looked at the burned section and made small sounds that Veltar recognized as the noise intelligent beings made when they were thinking hard about a problem. This reminds me of the electrical system in a car, Jake said, but much more complicated. And this part here looks like it moves energy around, like a transmission. What does this do? Veltar was amazed. Most species would look at Zephyrian technology and see only incomprehensible alien devices. This human was seeing patterns and purposes. That is the quantum field generator. It allows the ship to move faster than light by folding space around us. And it's connected to this crystal thing here. Yes, that is the focusing matrix. It is cracked. Without it, the quantum field cannot form properly. Jake looked at the crystal. It was about the size of his fist and had a crack running right through its middle. The crack glowed with unstable energy that made the air around it shimmer. I think I can fix this, Jake said. Veltar felt hope for the first time in days. Also doubt. The technology is very advanced. Even other spacefaring species struggle to understand Zephyrian quantum systems. Jake smiled for the first time since finding the ship. Son, I've been fixing things since I was 6 years old. My daddy always said that if something was built, it could be fixed. You just had to understand what it was trying to do and help it do that again. He looked around the ship with new eyes. It's not alien technology, but just another machine that needed help. Jake woke up to the sound of his phone ringing. The sun was already high in the sky, and he felt like he had only slept for a few minutes. He reached for his phone on the nightstand and saw it was his neighbor Lisa Grant calling. Jake, you need to get outside right now. Lisa's voice was shaking with fear. There are things in the sky above your house, big black things just floating there. Jake sat up in bed, suddenly wide awake. He remembered the long night in the woods working on Veltar's ship until dawn. The alien had been so grateful when Jake managed to get the quantum drive working again. The ship had lifted off just as the first light appeared in the eastern sky, disappearing into the stars with a soft blue glow. What kind of things, Lisa? Jake asked, but he already had a bad feeling about the answer. I don't know what to call them. They look like huge black ships. 3 of them just hanging in the air like they're waiting for something. Jim Peterson drove by your place this morning and called everyone in town. People are scared, Jake. Jake pulled on his clothes and rushed outside. What he saw made his blood run cold. 3 massive black ships floated silently above his property. Each one was at least 3 times bigger than Veltar's small scout ship. They had a dark, threatening look to them, with sharp edges and weapon. Ports that were clearly visible even from the ground. The ships cast long shadows across his garage and house. The air felt heavy and wrong, like the feeling before a bad thunderstorm. Jake could hear a low humming sound coming from the ships. Deeper than any engine he had ever heard, Sheriff Dan Cooper's patrol car came speeding up Jake's driveway, dust flying behind it. Don jumped out of his car and walked over to Jake, his hand resting on his gun but not drawing it. Jake, what the hell's going on here? Dan asked. People are calling me saying there are alien spaceships over your house. I told them they were crazy, but now I'm looking at them myself." Before Jake could answer, the air in front of them began to shimmer. A beam of light shot down from the largest ship, and shapes began to form in the light. Jake watched as 5 figures appeared on his front lawn, coming out of the light beam like they were walking down invisible stairs. The figures were not like Veltar at all. These beings were shorter than humans, but much wider, with thick arms and legs. They wore dark armor that looked like it was made from the same material as their ships. Their faces were hidden behind helmets, but Jake could see glowing red eyes through the faceplates. The leader of the group stepped forward. When he spoke, his voice came from a speaker in his helmet. The words were in English, but they sounded harsh and cold. "I am Commander Zexai of the Hegemony Fleet," the alien said. "We are here to retrieve a fugitive who was last detected at these coordinates. You will surrender the Zephyrian criminal and any technology he may have left behind." Sharif Cooper stepped forward, trying to look brave, even though Jake could see his hands shaking. "Now hold on there, mister. I don't know what authority you think you have here, but this is United States territory. You can't just land here and make demands." Commander Zexai turned his red eyes toward the sheriff. "Your primitive laws do not apply to hegemony operations. Stand aside or be removed." Jake knew he had to be careful. These aliens were clearly dangerous, and they were looking for Veltar. But the Zephyrian had already left Earth hours ago. Maybe Jake could convince them that they were too late. "I don't know what you're talking about," Jake said, trying to sound confused. "I haven't seen any aliens around here. It's just me and my garage." "Scan the area," Zexai ordered one of his soldiers. The soldier pulled out a device that looked like a gun, but had a small screen on the side. He pointed it at Jake's garage, and then at the house. The device made beeping sounds as he moved it around. "Commander, I'm detecting quantum residue throughout this area," the soldier reported. "High levels of Zephyrian energy signatures. Fugitive was definitely here." Zexai's red eyes focused on Jake. "You are lying, human. Our sensors do not make mistakes. The Zephyrian was here, and you helped him." More cars were arriving now. Jake could see people from town gathering at the end of his driveway, too scared to come closer, but too curious to leave. He saw Lisa Grant with her husband, old Mr. Peterson, from the gas station, and Amy Walsh, who worked for the local newspaper. "Search everything," Zexai commanded his soldiers. "Find any trace of Zephyrian technology or evidence of the fugitive's presence." The soldiers spread out across Jake's property, went into his garage and began pulling tools off the walls. Another searched around his house, using scanning devices to examine every surface. The third soldier walked toward the woods where Veltar's ship had crashed. Jake watched nervously as the soldiers worked. He'd cleaned up the crash site as best he could before dawn, but alien technology might leave traces he could not see. And there was something else he was worried about. Before Veltar left, the grateful alien had given Jake a small crystal device as a thank you gift. It was hidden in Jake's toolbox in the garage. "Commander, I found something," the soldier in the garage called out. Jake's heart sank as the soldier came out carrying his red toolbox. He opened it and pulled out the crystal device Veltar had given him. The crystal was only about the size of a quarter, but it glowed with the same blue light as the alien's ship. "Zephyrian technology," the soldier confirmed. "Looks like a personal communication device." Sai took the device and examined it closely. His red eyes seemed to glow brighter as he looked at Jake. "This proves you were lying. The fugitive was here, and he gave you this device. What else did he give you? What did you do for him?" Jake tried to think of what to say. He could not deny having the device now that they had found it. But he also could not tell them that he had repaired Veltar's ship and helped him escape. "A guy crashed in the woods last night," Jake said carefully. "He was hurt, so I helped him. Gave me that thing as payment, and then he left. I don't know where he went. What kind of help did you provide?" Zexai demanded. "Just first aid. Bandaged his wounds. Gave him some water. That's all." The soldier who had been searching the woods came back. "Commander, I found the crash site. There are clear signs that repairs were made to a Zephyrian scout ship. Advanced repairs using primitive materials." Zexai studied Jake with new interest. You repaired his ship. I wouldn't know how to fix an alien ship, Jake said. I just fix cars and trucks. Show me, Zexa said. He pulled out a damaged weapon from his belt. It looked like a rifle, but was made of the same dark material as the alien's armor. This plasma rifle was damaged in our last battle. If you only fix primitive vehicles, you should not be able to repair this. Jake looked at the weapon. Part of him wanted to refuse, but another part of him was curious. Even broken, he could see that it was a beautifully designed piece of technology. The energy flow patterns reminded him of the work he had done on Veltar's ship. What happens if I can't fix it? Jake asked. Zed's red eyes glowed brighter. Then we will know you are telling the truth about only being a primitive mechanic. But if you can repair it, we will know that your species is more dangerous than we thought. Sharif Cooper stepped closer to Jake. You don't have to do anything for them, Jake. These aliens have no right to make demands here. Actually, Sheriff, Zexai said, we have every right. The hegemony is the dominant military power in this galaxy. When we detect a species that might pose a threat to galactic order, we are authorized to take action. This human has already proven he can work with advanced technology. If he can repair our weapon, it will prove that humans are technologically adaptable. What if they are? Sharif Cooper asked. Then your species will be scheduled for early termination, Zexai said calmly. We cannot allow primitive worlds to develop into future threats to hegemony control. Jake felt the weight of the moment. Not just his life, but the life of every person on Earth might depend on what he did next. He looked at the broken weapon in Zexai's hands, then at the crowd of people from his town watching from a safe distance. I'll try to fix it, Jake said, but I'll need to use my garage and my tools. Jake carried the broken plasma rifle into his garage, with Commander Zexai and two of his soldiers following close behind. The weapon was heavier than it looked, and Jake could feel energy humming inside it even though it was damaged. Sheriff Cooper stayed outside, trying to keep the growing crowd of townspeople calm and at a safe distance. The garage felt different with the aliens inside it. Their dark armor seemed to absorb light, making the familiar space feel smaller and more threatening. Jake set the weapon on his main workbench and turned on his brightest work lights. You have 1 hour, Zexai said. If you cannot repair the weapon in that time, we will accept that humans are truly primitive and leave your world in peace. If you succeed, we will know that your species must be eliminated before you become a threat to the hegemony. Jake looked at the weapon under the bright lights. The rifle was about 3 feet long and made of a dark metal that seemed to shift color as he moved around it. There was a crack running along one side where something had hit it hard. Through the crack, Jake could see components that glowed with a faint red light. What exactly is wrong with it? Jake asked. The plasma containment chamber has been breached, one of the soldiers explained. The weapon can charge, but cannot fire safely. Most military engineers would need weeks to repair this type of damage. Jake nodded and began examining the weapon more closely. He had never seen anything like it before. But the basic principles reminded him of things he knew. The energy had to flow from one place to another, just like electricity in a car. There had to be a way to contain that energy. Like a gas tank holds fuel. And there had to be a way to control when and how that energy was released. Like a trigger and firing mechanism. Outside, Jake could hear more cars arriving. Word was spreading fast that aliens had landed in Millfield. He could hear Amy Walsh talking to someone on her phone, probably calling her newspaper editor. Sharif Cooper was trying to set up a safe perimeter. But people kept pushing closer to get a better look at the alien ships floating overhead. Jake picked up his smallest screwdriver and carefully began removing panels from the side of the weapon. The screws were not like anything he had seen before, but they turned the same way as Earth's screws. Inside, he found a maze of components that glowed and pulsed with energy. This is beautiful, Jake said without thinking. Zexai moved closer. What do you mean, the way it's designed? Everything has a purpose. Nothing is wasted. It's like looking at a perfect engine. Jake traced a pathway of glowing lines with his finger, careful not to touch them. The energy flows from here to here, gets compressed in this chamber, then gets released through this channel. The two hegemony soldiers looked at each other. Jake was describing the weapon's function correctly. Even though he had never seen one before, Jake found the cracked containment chamber. It was a cylinder about the size of a soda can, made of a clear material that looked like crystal. The crack went all the way through it, and Jake could see that energy was leaking out through the break. "I need to seal this crack," Jake said. He looked around his garage for something that might work. His eyes fell on a tube of special epoxy he used for repairing radiators. It was designed to hold under high pressure and temperature. "That primitive adhesive will not work," Zexai said. "The containment chamber operates at temperatures that would melt most materials." "Maybe," Jake said. "But this stuff is designed to seal cracks in engine blocks. It might hold long enough to get the weapon working again." Jake cleaned the crack carefully, then applied a thin line of epoxy along its length. While he waited for it to set, he examined the rest of the weapon. He found several other components that were not quite aligned properly. It was probably shaken loose when the containment chamber was damaged. "These connections are loose," Jake said, pointing to several glowing cables. That's why the energy flow is uneven." He used his smallest pliers to carefully adjust the connections. Each time he moved something, the weapon's internal glow changed slightly. Jake found himself understanding the patterns, seeing how each adjustment affected the energy flow throughout the system. People were gathering closer outside now. Jake could hear familiar voices through the garage walls. Mrs. Peterson was there, and Tom Richards, who ran the hardware store. Even old Father Murphy from the church had come to see what was happening. "The adhesive has set," Jake announced. He had also made several other small adjustments, tightening connections and realigning components that had been knocked out of place. "I think it might work now." Zexai took the weapon and examined Jake's repairs. The crack in the containment chamber was completely sealed, and the internal energy flow looked stable. But there was something different about the weapon's energy. Signature that Zexai could not identify. "We will test it," Zexai said. They walked outside where the crowd had grown to include most of the town. Sheriff Cooper had managed to keep people back behind his patrol cars, but everyone was watching. Amy Walsh had her camera out and was taking pictures of everything. HII raised the plasma rifle and pointed it at a large rock, about 50 yards away. He pulled the trigger, and the weapon fired with a sound like thunder. Bolt of red energy shot out and hit the rock, turning it into glowing slag in an instant. The crowd gasped and stepped back. Several people screamed. Jake himself was impressed by the weapon's power, but also worried. He had just helped make these dangerous aliens even more dangerous. "The weapon functions perfectly," Zexai announced. "In fact, it appears to be operating at higher efficiency than before it was damaged. This human has not only repaired our technology, he has improved it." Jake felt his stomach drop. He had been trying to just fix the weapon, not make it better. But apparently his adjustments had done more than he intended. "This proves that humans are technologically adaptable," Zexai continued. "Your species has the ability to understand and improve advanced technology using only primitive tools. This makes you a long-term threat to hegemony control." Sheriff Cooper stepped forward.
"Oh, wait just a minute."
"Jake fixed your weapon like you asked.
You
Said if he could do it, you'd know we were dangerous. But you also said if he couldn't do it, you'd leave us alone. Can't have it both ways." "I said we would leave in peace if he could not repair it," Zexai corrected. "Since he not only repaired it but improved it, we now know that humanity must be eliminated before you develop into a true threat." The crowd behind the sheriff began to panic. People started running back to their cars. Amy Walsh kept taking pictures even as she backed away. Jake saw the fear in everyone's faces and realized that his attempt to save Earth had actually doomed it. "You're making a mistake," Jake said desperately. "I'm just one person. Most humans can't do what I do." "Perhaps," Zexai said, "but if one human can adapt our technology so easily, others will learn to do the same. In a few generations, your species could pose a real threat to the hegemony. We eliminate such threats before they can develop." Zexai spoke into a communication device on his wrist. "Begin orbital bombardment preparations. Target the major population centers first." But as he gave the order, something strange began happening to the plasma rifle in his hands. The weapon's energy signature was fluctuating in ways that should not be possible. Warning lights began flashing on his armor's display system. "What did you do to my weapon?" HFY demanded, looking at Jake. Jake tried to look innocent, but inside he was hoping his secret modification was working. When he had repaired the weapon, he had not just fixed the damage. He had also installed something extra, something the aliens would not expect from a primitive human. He had given the weapon a computer virus. Jake had learned about computer programming from his nephew who studied it in college. The virus he had built into the weapon systems was simple but effective. It was designed to spread through any networked system and cause cascade failures, and hegemony weapons were networked to their ship systems for targeting and ammunition management. "I don't know what you mean," Jake said. "Just fixed it like you asked." The plasma rifle in HFY's hands began making sounds it had never made before. Warning beeps came from the weapon, and red lights flashed along its side. The commander looked at the weapon with confusion and growing anger. "What is happening to our systems?" one of the soldiers called out. He was looking at a device on his wrist, and Jake could see warning lights flashing on it too. Above them, the three massive black ships began to behave strangely. Their perfect hovering became unsteady, and they started to drift slowly sideways. Lights that had been steady now flickered on and off. A sound like grinding metal came from the largest ship. Jax spoke rapidly into his communication device. "Command Center, report your status," a voice answered, but it was full of static and hard to understand. "Commander, we are experiencing system failures throughout the fleet. Weapon systems are offline. Navigation is unreliable. Shields are fluctuating." Jake watched all of this happening and tried not to smile. His virus was working better than he had hoped. When he repaired the plasma rifle, he had hidden a small piece of computer code inside its control system. The code was based on something his nephew had shown him once, a program that could copy itself and spread through connected computer networks. Jake had guessed that alien weapons would be connected to their ship's computers, just like how modern cars had computers that talked to each other. When HFY fired the weapon, the virus had uploaded itself to his ship's systems. From there, it spread to the other two ships. "This is impossible," HFY said, staring at his malfunctioning weapon. "Our technology is protected against all known forms of attack." "Maybe it's just broken," Jake suggested innocently. "Sometimes when you fix one thing, something else breaks. Happens all the time with old cars." But HFY was not fooled. He grabbed Jake by the shirt and pulled him close. "You did something to our systems. What did you do?" Before Jake could answer, Sharif Cooper stepped forward with his gun drawn. "Let him go. I don't care what kind of fancy armor you have. I bet this still hurts." The two hegemony soldiers immediately raised their weapons toward the sheriff. But when they pulled the triggers, nothing happened. The weapons made clicking sounds, but did not fire. "Our weapons are completely offline," one soldier reported. In the distance, Jake could hear car engines starting as people tried to leave town. But many townspeople were still watching from behind the patrol cars, too fascinated by what was happening to drive away. Amy Walsh was still taking pictures, her camera flashing constantly. HFY's communication device crackled to life again. "Commander, we need to retreat immediately. We have lost weapons, shields, and life support is failing, whatever's attacking. Our systems is spreading faster than we can contain it." Jake knew this was his chance to explain what he had done. Maybe if the aliens understood that Earth could defend itself, they would think twice about attacking. "I put a computer virus in." "Your weapon?" Jake announced to the crowd as much as to HFY. "It's spreading through your ship's systems and shutting them down." The crowd murmured in amazement. Mrs. Peterson called out, "Jake, you clever boy." Tom Richards started clapping, and soon other people joined in. HFY looked at Jake with something that might have been respect mixed with anger. "A virus. We never considered that a primitive species would use information warfare against us." "That's the thing about humans," Sharif Cooper said, still pointing his gun at the alien commander. "We're full of surprises." Suddenly the sky above them filled with new lights. But these were not the harsh red lights of the hegemony ships. These were bright white lights, and they were coming from ships that had a completely different design. Where the hegemony ships were all sharp angles and dark metal, these new ships were smooth and graceful, with surfaces that seemed to glow with their own light. Galactic Council Fleet, Zexai said with disgust. The Zephyrian must have reached them. One of the new ships descended toward Jake's property. It was much smaller than the hegemony vessels, about the same size as Veltar's scout ship had been. It landed gently in the field next to Jake's garage, and a door opened in its side. Veltar stepped out, but he was not alone. Next to him walked a tall woman wearing a blue uniform with symbols that looked official. Her hair was gray, and she moved with the confidence of someone used to being in command. "I am Admiral Kira Thorne of the Earth Defense Initiative," the woman announced as she approached. "Mr. Martinez, I believe we owe you a great debt." Jake stared at her in confusion. Earth Defense Initiative? I've never heard of that. We're a secret organization that has been preparing for first contact with alien civilizations, Admiral Thorne explained. "We have been watching Earth from hidden bases for decades, waiting for the right moment to reveal ourselves." Veltar approached Jake with what might have been a smile on his alien features. "I told the Galactic Council about your remarkable abilities. They sent Admiral Thorne and a fleet to protect your world." "The Council has been observing human development for some time," Admiral Thorne continued. "But your actions in helping Veltar and then defending against the hegemony have accelerated our timeline considerably."
XI
was speaking urgently into his communication device, trying to coordinate with his damaged ships.
What?
But Jake could see that the virus was still spreading. More warning lights were flashing on the alien soldiers' equipment, and the 3 black ships above were drifting further apart as their control systems failed. "Commander Zexai," Admiral Thorne called out, "your ships are disabled and you are outnumbered. The Galactic Council fleet has surrounded your vessels. Surrender now, and you will be treated according to interstellar law." "The hegemony does not surrender to inferior species," Zexai replied. "Then you will be destroyed where you stand," Admiral Thorne said calmly. Jake watched as more council ships appeared in the sky around the crippled hegemony vessels. The new ships were sleek and beautiful, but Jake could see weapon ports opening. Along their hulls, it was clear that the council fleet was much more advanced than the hegemony ships. "Wait," Jake called out. He was not sure why, but he felt like there had been enough fighting for one day. "Commander Zexai, your ships are damaged and your weapons don't work. Your own people are probably getting sick from life support failures. You can't win this fight." Zexai looked at Jake for a long moment. "You could have destroyed us completely with your virus. Why did you only disable our systems?" Jake thought about that. "I'm a mechanic, not a soldier. I fix things. I don't destroy them. I just wanted to stop you from hurting people." "This human shows mercy even to his enemies," Veltar observed. "This is why the Council believes your species deserves protection." Sharif Cooper lowered his gun slightly. "Jake's right. We don't need to kill anyone today. Commander, take your people and leave. Tell your hegemony that Earth is under Council protection now." The largest hegemony ship was now listing badly to one side, smoke coming from several sections. Zexa's communication device was barely working, but Jake could hear panicked voices calling for immediate evacuation. "Very well," Zexai said finally. "We will withdraw. But know this, human. The hegemony has a long memory. We will not forget what happened here today." The alien commander and his soldiers walked back to where they had first appeared. The same beam of light that had brought them down from their ship now lifted them back up. Jake watched as they disappeared into the damaged vessel. The 3 black ships began to move away from Earth. But slowly and unsteadily, Jake's virus had done its job well. It would take the hegemony a long time to repair the damage in figure. Out how to protect against similar attacks in the future, Admiral Thorian walked over to Jake and held out her hand. "Mr. Martinez, on behalf of the Galactic Council and the people of Earth, thank you. Your actions today have not only saved our planet, but opened the door to a new future for humanity." Jake shook her hand, still trying to understand everything that had happened. This morning he had been a simple mechanic in a small town. Now he was apparently some kind of hero who had helped save the world. 3 days after the hegemony ships left Earth, Jake's small town of Millfield had become the most famous place on the planet. News crews from every major television network had set up camps along Main Street. Government officials in black cars drove up and down his road every hour. Tourists came from hundreds of miles away just to see where first contact with aliens had happened. Jake sat on his front porch, drinking coffee and watching the chaos. His garage was closed for business because he could not get to it through all the reporters and government agents. Sheriff Cooper had set up barriers to keep people from walking all over his property, but Jake could see cameras with long lenses pointed at him from every direction. Admiral Thorne had stayed on Earth for these 3 days, meeting with world leaders and helping to set up what she called transition protocols. She told Jake that the Galactic Council wanted to bring Earth into their organization, but it would take time to work out all the details. "Mr. Martinez," a voice called from his yard. Jake looked up to see Veltar walking toward his porch. The alien looked much healthier than when Jake had first found him in the crashed ship. His broken arm was healed, and his skin glowed with its normal soft light. "Otar," Jake said, standing up to greet his friend. "Good to see you up and around. How are you feeling?" "Much better. Thanks to your help," Veltar replied. "I wanted to speak with you before the formal ceremonies begin." "What ceremonies?" "The Galactic Council has decided to offer Earth full membership in the galactic community, but they want you to be Earth's first official representative." Jake nearly dropped his coffee cup. "Me? I'm just a mechanic from Montana. Shouldn't the president or someone like that represent Earth?" "Your government leaders are certainly important," Veltar agreed. "But the Council is more interested in the person who actually made first contact possible. You saved my life, repaired my ship, and then defended your world against the hegemony. The Council believes you understand both human and alien perspectives." Admiral Thorne appeared around the corner of the house, walking with a man in an expensive suit, whom Jake recognized from television as the Secretary of State. Behind them came Sheriff Cooper, looking uncomfortable in a new uniform that was much fancier than his usual clothes. "Jake," Admiral Thorne said as she approached the porch, "I hope Veltar has explained the Council's offer." He mentioned something about representing Earth," Jake said. "But I don't know anything about politics or diplomacy." "You know how to solve problems," the Secretary of State said. "And from what I've seen, that might be more important than traditional diplomatic training." Sheriff Cooper climbed the porch steps and sat down next to Jake. "I've been talking to Admiral Thorne about this whole situation. Turns out the Earth Defense Initiative has been working with our government for years, getting ready for this day. The idea's base is on the Moon and Mars," Admiral Thorne explained. "We've been quietly preparing Earth's defenses and studying galactic politics. But we always knew that when first contact finally happened, it would probably be unexpected and messy." "Well, it was definitely unexpected," Jake said. "And pretty messy." Veltar touched Jake's shoulder with one of his forehands. "The Council was impressed by how you handled both situations. You helped me when you had no reason to trust me. Then you found a way to stop the hegemony without destroying them. You showed both kindness and wisdom." Plus, Admiral Thorne added, "Your technical abilities are remarkable. The way you adapted Zephyrian technology and then created a virus that could affect hegemony systems shows a type of thinking that the galaxy needs." Jake looked out at the crowds of people still gathered around his property. He could see Amy Walsh interviewing people for her newspaper, which had become famous overnight. Mrs. Peterson was selling coffee and sandwiches. 2 reporters from a table in her front yard. Tom Richards had put up a sign advertising First Contact hardware store as seen on Galactic News. "What would I have to do?" Jake asked. "You would work with the Council to help integrate Earth into galactic society," Admiral Thorne explained. "That means helping to set up trade agreements, cultural exchanges, and technology transfers. You would also help other species understand how humans think and solve problems. And you would keep your garage," Veltar added, with what Jake was learning to recognize as alien humor. "The Council believes that staying connected to your roots as a mechanic will help you serve both humanity and the galaxy." Sheriff Cooper nudged Jake with his elbow. "They offered me a job too, planetary security liaison. Basically, I'd be the sheriff for the whole planet when it comes to alien visitors." "What do you think, Dan?" Jake asked. "I think we're way out of our league here," Cooper replied. "But I also think we're the right people for the job. We know how to deal with problems without making them worse." The Secretary of State checked his watch. The formal ceremony begins in 1 hour. The council representatives are gathering at the landing site behind your garage. World leaders will be watching by video conference. This is a historic moment, Jake. Jake stood up and walked to the edge of his porch. He could see the field behind. His garage, where several alien ships had landed over the past few days. Council representatives from a dozen different species had come to Earth for this ceremony. He had met beings that looked like giant insects, others that seemed to be made of living crystal, and some that were just floating clouds of energy. "If I do this," Jake said, "I want to make sure Earth doesn't lose what makes us human. I don't want us to become just another species that follows orders from the Council." "The Council values diversity," Veltar assured him. "They want humans. To remain human, that's why your species is valuable to the galactic community. You think differently than other species." Admiral Thorne nodded. "The galaxy has been dominated by the hegemony for too long. They rule through fear and force. The Council wants to show that cooperation and understanding can be stronger than weapons and threats. And you think humans can help with that?" "Think you already have," Admiral Thorne said. "When you chose to help Veltar instead of turning him over to the authorities, you showed that humans can make moral choices even when they're afraid. When you found a way to stop the hegemony without killing them, you showed that humans prefer solutions to violence." Jake thought about everything that had happened since he found Veltar's crashed ship. 3 days ago, his biggest worry was fixing Mrs. Peterson's truck. He was being asked to help guide humanity into a new age of galactic citizenship. "All right, Jake," said finally, "I'll do it. But I have some conditions." "Name them," the Secretary of State said. "I keep my garage open. I want to stay a mechanic, not become some kind of politician. Second, Sheriff Cooper gets to help me with security decisions. And third, this town gets protected from all the media attention. These people have lives to live." "Agreed, Admiral," Thorne said immediately. "And I guess I'm Earth's first galactic representative," Jake said. An hour later, Jake stood in the field behind his garage, facing representatives from dozens of alien species. Admiral Thorne stood beside him, along with Sheriff Cooper and Veltar. World leaders watched from screens set up around the landing area. Hundreds of reporters recorded every moment. The head of the Galactic Council was a being that looked like a tall tree with silver bark and leaves that glowed with soft light. When it spoke, its voice sounded like wind through branches. "Jake Martinez of Earth," the council leader said. "You have shown that humanity possesses the wisdom and courage needed for galactic citizenship. Do you accept the responsibility of representing your species in the Galactic Council?" "I do," Jake said. "And I promise to always remember that I'm just a mechanic from Montana who got lucky." The alien representatives made sounds that Jake learned were expressions of approval in their various languages. The ceremony continued with formal declarations and the signing of documents that would make Earth an official member of the galactic community. Later that evening, as the crowds finally began to disperse,
Ow.
Jake sat on his porch again with Veltar and Sheriff Cooper. The alien ships were still visible in the sky, but they no longer seemed threatening. They were just neighbors from across the galaxy. "So what happens now?" Jake asked. "Now," Veltar said, "the real work begins. The galaxy is a big place, and there are many species that need to learn how to work together. Your people have a gift for finding solutions where others see only problems." Jake smiled and took a sip of his coffee. Tomorrow he would start learning about galactic politics and alien cultures. But tonight, he was still just a mechanic in Montana, sitting on his porch under a sky full of stars that no longer seemed quite so far away.